welcome back to Dev Game Club, a weekly podcast in which two veteran game developers look at games from the past to discuss their relevance and impact today. I'm Brett Duville, and I'm joined as always by my co-host, a man who knows where to find the most delicious and nutritious rocks around.
Tim Longo.
You do. You just pop right up. I think you're a rock, you know, yep. And then you just sit up. And I'm like, I thought that was a rock.
Oh, they're so adorable. They're just those Gorons, and they're specifically, as we mentioned in pre-show, one of the notes I wrote down just is their audio design is so amazing. Like, it's just, and we talked about it last time, but I mean, the transition, not to jump right in, but the transition from 2D to 3D, and I think audio design, audio specifically, because maybe you would know more about the system, but obviously going from an Super Nintendo to an N64, there's got to be some sort of chip in there that's changed things quite a bit. And they definitely just, more than I'd say Mario 64 did, really just went hog wild on the audio design and the music. And you know, obviously they don't have full voice or anything, but they have enough sort of emotes, sort of voice emotes from them, and then they're just the little music that plays and the little sound effects and stuff. It's just beautifully comes to life.
Yeah, I don't know. I never shipped anything on the N64, so anything I would remember there would probably be pretty weak. But one thing I will say is that that's always been the case with Nintendo hardware, is that they treat like, you know, we often complain in game development, or we are often complained too, that we're not putting enough into audio, right? That audio, it's an audio visual experience, right? It's one of the things that we're told, and there are a lot of people who don't treat audio with the respect it really deserves. Yeah. And audio has a way of cutting right through, you know, to our emotional core, you know, and it just kind of gets under your defenses, right? It you know, music has that, you know, linguistic quality of being able to speak to people, and Nintendo has always put into their hardware often dedicated memory. I believe it was the GameCube that had sort of special memory and a chip specifically to access it that was a little different. It was a very weird kind of architecture for it, but for the same reason, like to give you audio, and that's what it was mostly used for, on that little mini disc system. So yeah, it's wild. I mean, it's just a thing they've always done particularly well. And you know, we talked a little bit about it in connection with the Game Boy when we did Pokemon, and it's just a thing they always pay attention to. So,
well, and I think it's not, to your point about like developers under appreciating it, I feel like it's often not enough of the focus, even with press, and then ultimately even with players. I feel like when we talk about cutting edge, like the big news stories tend to be graphics cards and the new box, what it's going to do, like gigaflops or whatever the hell. And but like people don't realize when those, the audio takes up a lot of, like, audio has its own complications and its own technical challenges, and then memory as well. Like audio is not cheap from a memory perspective. No,
it takes up a lot of memory for fidelity.
And when people talk about like the big downloads these days or whatever, a lot of that's probably VO, and it's just like, I don't know. I just feel like we definitely, and even on this podcast, I think we've gotten criticism, and I think we would agree that we don't bring it up enough. But I mean, playing this game and being able to, I'm just so happy we decided to take it a little slower, because I'm just able to, go at a reasonable pace, but also feel like I can kind of veer off a little bit and poke around. Yeah. And it's just the attention to detail on the audio specifically. The other example I would give for this particular section, because of the dungeon we played, I thought the ambient dunge, as you would call it,
yes,
it was quite good.
Old ambient dunge, yes, it is. No, yeah, I mean, Yeah, you feel like you're underground a bit, and
It's very Tomb Raider-y. You know, it's
Yeah.
like a Nintendo's version of Tomb Raider in a way, because they were very good at that ambient feel too in the Tomb Raider dungeons. But yeah, it's a good section.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, one of the things that we were talking about, we'll just hit all the audio stuff at once, I suppose, is that, and when you're talking to the little Goron next to the tunnel that goes to the Lost Woods, even in conversation with him, when you're getting his, sort of emotive, oh, or whatever that he does, you can hear underneath it very faintly, Saria's song. Yeah. Whether or not you know that song yet. Which is super cool. And you also, if you talk to her at that point, she'll say, "You must be close to the woods." And it's just, if you sing her song when you're in her presence where you learn it from her, she says, "I'd rather just talk to you."
Yeah. Right.
I mean, it's just lots of little, it's teaching you. It's both fully rich, right, in the sense of like the world makes sense, but also it's teaching you like it's going to matter where you do these things, right? This is not, that context will matter in the decisions you make with when you deploy the music, and I just love that, yeah.
And so speaking of Saria's song, we did it two different ways.
Yes.
To talk about mine really quickly, so I came in from Death Mountain, Gorons. I don't remember what they actually call that city before the town Mountain. Before. Yeah.
Oh,
whatever.
Oh, Kakariko Village.
Yes. Well, that's what the base of it. I thought the Goron had a name for their town.
Oh, maybe. Yeah. I don't remember.
Anyway, coming from Death Mountain, essentially. And so, like Brett said, you hear the music before you even blow the wall open. Then you go through, and the owl is there, and he says, "Hello, you should go see Saria." Like Navi's been telling me for a while, because I ignored that and just kind of came straight here. And so you should go see. But the owl also says, "Listen." I don't remember exactly what he says, but he says, "Listen for the song, and it will guide your way," or something like that. And I forgot about this from playing before so many years ago. And so I was like, "Oh yeah, okay, cool. Of course. Yeah. Listen, whatever, dude." And then I start going through, and then I realize that when you come to each intersection, obviously you have forward, left, or right. The stereo audio music kicks in of her song playing. And I'm like, holy that is to the left. That song is only coming from the left. So I turn left, I go to the next one. Now it's coming from the right. Now it's then, and so I'm literally following, again, going back to the point of them really leaning into what the system is, milking the system for everything it can do, which I have a note later that I want to talk about performance in this section too, which I didn't say in pre-show. But I do want to talk about performance and Zelda games, because they have a bit of notorious history with that. But anyway, but they're utilizing the music capability of the system in a level design way, right? In a puzzle way, where they're leaning into something that the system does really well and showing off the system with a great composition, a memorable song to this day. Like everyone remembers that song. And then it's also the thing you have to do to find her. You don't have to do it, but it helps you find her.
I was going to say, I'm thankful that you don't, right? I mean, that's one of the things that they're also good at is there's really two ways to do it. I mean, you can just do it in the exhaustive way, which is, of course, what I had already done. They don't randomize it, I guess is my point, which they could have, right? They could have made it, sometimes it's 3 rights and a left and, or whatever.
Right. Which I feel like they've done in the past.
I think they have, yes. And I don't...
Some of the 2D
I feel
ones,
like
maybe.
they have, maybe in some of the 2D.
But I see what you're saying. It's like, you could have. There still is a literal path, and the audio, the music just helps you find it.
Yep.
And the way you went, because you came in from the Kakariko Village, or the regular village. The regular village. Kakariko is
forest.
Is Impa's
Kokiro Forest.
Yeah, right.
Kakariko Village, Kokiro Forest.
Did the owl not visit you when you went in there to tell you about to tell you to go find
No,
her?
it did. It did.
Oh, okay.
When I came again. But in this case, I didn't come from the Goron Junction or Goron City. I just called that spot Goron Junction. So in my little map, I would be like, oh yeah, this is the way I'd be able to get to the Goron City. It told me that as well, but I had not come from the same direction. I had been out doing something. I don't remember. I think I was trying to figure out where to go, and then Navi came up and said, hey, you should talk to Saria. I was like, oh, okay, right, I should probably talk to Saria, because I just gotten the Ocarina, and
she says that right away. In fact, Navi does. And I ignored it.
I had in my mind that because you get the cutscene to show you like go to Death Mountain. It doesn't do a cutscene to show you, go see Saria, right? So it does sort of reinforce that path. Yeah, it's funny though.
I mean, I do feel like they might be breaking their rules a little bit there though, because it's sort of pseudo open world at that, this game is, or it's hub and spoke at least. And so you're standing there and they've told you to go to Death Mountain, and you can do that, which is what I did. And I actually got to the point where I could not progress until I got her song.
Right.
But it's not, I don't know, getting partially way down the path and then to discover that you need to do something to, to go back that Navi had also told you about. It's just a little bit of a mixed message,
Yeah.
It's kind of blurring two different objectives. And, there's maybe I'm applying too much of modern player to this, but there's a little bit of like the Saria thing to me felt like a side quest or something. I didn't think of it as a critical path, so it didn't feel necessary to go do it first. But then if you did have it first, the funny thing about the sort of puzzle,
I mean, I think it is indicated that you're supposed to. I mean, I think that when you leave, right, she specifically says you'll come back and see me, right? She.
Yeah, but I thought that was just like a thing. That was just like you'd come back.
I would
there.
say Nintendo is far too meticulous for that, right? I mean, I think that that's intentional.
No, I know. I mean, I do agree, but my point is like you can get pretty far into the Goron section before needing to do it. It wasn't like the thing you needed at the gate to get in, and so it kind of leads you in enough to where. It just, I don't know. It's just a little bit.
At least you don't have to go all the way around. That's one thing.
Well, the other
having
thing,
a shortcut is really nice.
Yeah, that's for sure. I mean, that was probably fairly necessary in that regard. I think. What was I going to say? The thing about it for me though is it's tricky when. So if you imagine, so when you got to the king, did you already have the song?
I did.
Okay, so I did not. So in that case, there's backtracking to be had. If you have the song already, the thing about the thing that I like, even though there's backtracking about the way that I did it, is that I got to a point where I couldn't progress. And then the only next thing I could do was the thing I needed to do. You know what I mean? If I had gone, and I've had this happen to me in other games, if I had gotten it first and then gotten to that point, unless they give you, maybe you can tell me if they gave me a clue about it, but unless they give me a clue of some kind that I already have the thing I need, then often I get stuck at those moments because I think that I don't have what I need.
Yeah, there is a clue.
Okay.
The clue is if you talk to the guard outside. So the guard outside is like he'll only see the king's messenger or something like that, and you need the lullaby to open the door.
Right.
Right. But at that point, you might think, I know I don't need to talk to that guard again. But if you do talk to that guard again, he says, oh, yeah, the king's been in a real funk. He really likes forest music, though, or something like that, right?
He does not.
He does.
Oh, see, but then you have to, well, yeah, I don't know if I would have talked to him again.
Right, but I mean, that is a thing that I think one of the things you have to be willing to do when you play these games, right? When you play any of these sorts of games, you have to be willing to say, okay, well, I'm stuck. Let me talk to everybody, right? You know, and these days we tend to design around that by journals, and we put everything in one conversation instead of multiple conversations. And this game is definitely different from that standpoint. Or we just straight up, put indicators on maps and things like that. So,
however, I will say that one thing that they are generally good at, Nintendo, and they have already taught me in this game up to this point that we have played. Most of the time when you talk to somebody a second time, they have the same thing to say. Usually they have one thing to say. And so in this case, you could argue that there was a state change with the door that you got through with that guard right there. But I bet if you go and talk to the rest of the Goron in that place, they don't say anything new.
That's correct. They don't.
And so it's like, you know what I mean? It's like a little bit of a like, I don't think I would have thought to talk to him because they've taught me that I don't need to talk to people multiple times. But anyway, yeah. So all that being said, getting to Saria was still cool for me because I was using the method that the owl was telling me because I hadn't been in the Lost Woods yet, as you had. And
exhaustively as I had.
Yeah, right. Sounds like
looking for the sword like I did.
Oh, right. Yeah, that old chestnut. So it was fun. It was fun to get in there. And the one small note that I wanted to mention when you do get to her to get the song and talk to her in the meadow. The meadow is set up in this kind of, in this, it's got, it's within a little canyon sort of. So there's cliff walls on either side. And in the back though, there's like this ruined temple or there's these ruins that she's sort of sitting on or near. And I just had this, two points. One being, again, going back to the topic we said last time of seeing a 2D representation of Zelda put into 3D. Right. And because you would find temples, you would find like these ancient places in the 2D games and it was in your imagination and you filled in the gaps and it was just, it's all in its 16-bit glory. Then you come here and you come into the screen, you see this temple and you're like, oh, I'm standing here for real, like in 3D. And it works so well. And you have her there and like the whole scene is very just like nice. She talks about how this place is going to be, she has this feeling that it's going to be important to both of them. I don't remember exactly what that is, but I'm sure I will later. But then the other thing is like, which is again, going to my 200 hours of Breath of the Wild, like there is such a thing about finding these, because Zelda is such a franchise that's built around history and mythology, in the sense that every time you play a Zelda game, Hyrule is at some time period. There's a lot of stuff that happened before the moment you're playing and a lot of stuff that will happen after, because there's that sort of like that mythical sort of cycle, like the hero's journey stuff. And so standing in with her at that temple, I just got this like Zelda feel, of like that temple used to be something, and in the future, somebody else, another Link will find it someday, and
well,
that's
in the
something
future, this Link I think can find it,
right? Exactly, yeah.
Turns out, but
in this game, in this game, yeah. I
don't know if it's on a critical path because I think it's a Deku seed thing or whatever. There's a little, so they're having played it in the last 10 years. I definitely am seeing things and going, oh, cool, and I make notes of it because I'm going to go back.
You grow a seed there or something?
I think you can put a seed there when you're kid Link, and then when you come back as adult Link, there'll be a plant, right, that you can climb. Yeah. I love that stuff, and I love that I can pay attention to it better knowing about it coming at it. That's one of the things that I do appreciate about modern design is that it will just keep track of that stuff for me and I don't have to do it myself. If I've seen it, it'll tell me you found one here and I can go back and find it. So we should talk about them. We had talked, is that everything you wanted to cover with the music? I had one other note kind of about
go ahead.
Yeah. So one of the things is that the Ocarina, of course, as you play it has 5 notes, right? It has the 4 directionals and the A button, the big button. Oh, a big button for me, I guess. And because I don't remember if the N64 controllers...
They're the same size. Yep. They're bigger, but B and A are the same size.
Okay. And the thing that I love about that is one of the things we talk about from time to time here on the cast is how constraints inspire creativity. And every song that you're going to be able to play, which is quite a number, as I recall, like 12 or something like that, has to be able to do something with 5 notes. And it's the same 5 notes.
Yeah.
And all of the theming in the game has to work with those 5 notes. I mean, they might, after you've played your part, da 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 da, and it'll kind of go off and do something else.
Yeah.
But it has to at least incorporate a major theme that is just 5 notes and always the same 5 notes, which gives a sort of unifying concept to all the music in the game. It all feels of a piece. And it's because of this constraint, which comes from their controller. And that just blows my mind. Like every time I play a Nintendo game and something like that is there, I just take my hat off. Like as a game developer, I just go, you just leaned right into this constraint instead of trying to like turn it into chords where it's like, yeah, but you can press the L key and that's like putting a thumb over a hole on the ocarina and shifting everything, 6 notes or whatever. So you get more. You just deal with less. You just do it with less. Yeah. And it's so beautiful.
They could have used a lot more.
Yeah. Oh yeah. They could have made it. Yeah. They could have made it. Well, probably 3 or 4, hold L and then hold R and then hold them both and press these buttons. And suddenly you've got 20. And it would be horrible. And I would hate it. And that's how a lot of companies would approach this. It's like, oh, we've got more buttons. Let's put more stuff on it. Oh, you know what? We don't have enough buttons. Now we need to hold a button to do a thing, or you hold this one in, it's a chord, you press some other thing, or a combo, as we like to say here on the podcast. So we get email about it. You get these multiple, button, hold this one and press these other things. And it's like overloaded. And it's like, well, no wonder people don't play games anymore when they get to be adults. They just don't want to deal with it. And when you're a kid, of course, you're like, well, whatever. Or if you're a professional, I guess. Anyway, I love that. It just makes me so happy, as somebody who played music for a lot of my life, to just see so much out of so little. And it just reminds you just how constraints are great. They're just so good for creativity. So
no, it's an inspiring topic for them every time I think we play one of their games. And I think to pile onto the Ocarina thing, which we haven't really used it that much yet, but we did use it as a couple keys in this one. And I actually, we don't have to cover it now, but I did the graveyard, sort of I think a lot of the graveyard stuff that I can do right now. So I got a 3rd song there, but
the night day cycle song, right?
The sun, that's the sun song or something. Must go to day if it's nighttime, which I have a point about in a second. But it's just like they've also incorporated the ocarina as a mechanic in the game, a lock and key mechanic, right? And so they've integrated the music and the constraints you were just talking about, but the music being such a signature part, and they made it part of gameplay essentially and level design. So you have to actually think about these as new tools that you have, like you have in other Zelda games where tools are sort of like its whole thing. And now one of them is a series of songs, and that's amazing. And then as a partner to that, which we'll talk a lot more about later as we play, but I'll just introduce it and touch on it now. But time is as a theme as well, and twofold. One, like we kind of threw out there that I think last episode that there was a day-night cycle, at least in Hyrule Field. No, it's actually in other places too. And so like you have like, who knows which came first, but say they knew that they were going to have this concept of time being a theme throughout the whole game design. And then at some point it dawned on them, if we have a game about time, we probably need to have a day-night cycle of some kind. Like time needs to pass. And then that actually is, okay, well, can we do that? Sure. Oh, what happens at night? Oh, okay. So the skeletons come out. I always forget the skeletons' names, but, and so
dry bones, maybe.
Yeah. It could be, dry bones. And so it just causes this whole network of design to start, right? Because once you start with that one theme, they basically make it all cohesive around this concept. And then the cynical production side of me says time also is a conceit for them to reuse content, because there's now two complete states, right? There's when you grow up and when you're young. And so now I don't know if it was a cart limitation or what, but you could imagine. Now let's not do the cynical version and think, well, they just wanted to do a time thing and they wanted to like Link Between Worlds or Link to the Past have these different states. So let's assume positive intent there, and but still, like, it all kind of works together, and they, arguably they probably come at this with iteration, right? And they've discovered the stuff as they go, but the real important part of it is that where they end up once they go through it, because I'm sure they had failed experiments that didn't work.
Well, it's even more than two states, because you not only do you have the young and old, but you also have night and day for each. So if you go back to Kakariko Village, if you wait on the field and go in at night, the guy near the entrance is a sort of zombie looking fellow or something like that. You probably did that, right? Because you had to go to the graveyard.
Yep, yeah, I did. Yeah. So you're right. So it's essentially four states for the main locations. Yeah. But it's obviously it's good production because it's clever reuse. But it's also fits. It doesn't feel like, not to say that this was their motivation, but even if it were their motivation, it doesn't feel like a production reality. It feels like it's intentional because of the theme of the game.
Right. Yeah.
So
that's very true. Yeah, it's very true. Yep. Yeah, and of course they'll make it, as you already discovered, they'll make it a power, right? It's also a thing you can do on player demand. I mean, like, all of that is just, they just get every mile out of it that they can, which is just great. Yeah, I mean, it's a great production technique as well. But it also helps players, right? I mean, it gives players more control over the world, to be able to address the challenges and not have it waste their time, which is really nice. Like, the first time I got to Hyrule Castle, which was right when I exited the village, or the forest rather, I went straight to the castle. I took no detours, and right as I got there, the wolf howled and the bridge went up, and I just stood there because I did remember about the bones, and none were attacking me. There's certain places where if you stand, that you're not close enough to where one will spawn that it'll actually spawn. So I just stood there, and eventually the sun came back up and the cock crowed, and I went through the gate. But then a similar thing happened going into Kakariko Village, that I got there, and at the bottom of those stairs, they will just constantly spawn. So I just sat there and just like kept knocking down skeletons, for, whatever it is, a minute. I mean, it's not a lot of time, but it's still time. So anyway. Yeah,
we'll definitely come back to Hyrule Field, because we have lots to talk about with that structure.
Oh yeah,
and its influence on so many Hyrule Field, specifically. So
I will definitely put that one down right now as a future topic, because it's going to come up for sure.
Yep.
Okay. You want to move into a dungeon? Let's talk about some of the dungeon stuff.
Yeah, we should. Yeah, we can. Let's talk about
Dodongo cat.
Dodongo. Yeah, Dodongo. That's right. Yeah, we don't. I mean, there's not too much to talk about with the Goron town. That we kind of hit some of it with the song and stuff. But
one of the things I like, although we can talk about, one of the things I like is, we should we'll tie it in. We'll come back around to it when we talk about the bombs as a mechanic. I wanted to generally touch off dungeons just to talk about the mechanics of dungeons, which are different from a lot of other dungeon mechanics, and why. And we'll get to why I want to talk about it. There's a couple things. One is there is no randomness to their dungeons. There are no random monsters. There are no random elements, really. I don't think of any kind. Everything is very clockworky, in the sense that it's scripted to be a particular way. but also I think it resets, right? Or replenishes or what have you. And that is both the monsters or challenges or what have you. And it's also the little bottles and bits of grass and things like that. And I think this really, last time we described this as kind of a gentle game or slipping into a warm bath and use words like that. And I think that this is part of why it feels that way. It's you know that it's going to work a certain way. Once you've seen it working, you don't have to relearn, a room. You've been into a room, it's going to be the same way if you have to come back to it. And that really creates a psychological safety that is why we love these games so much, right? They're just comforting that the world makes sense, for example, in a way, right? I mean, it's just like, oh, yes, they tell you in physics that everything's reversible and with the same initial conditions, all happen the same way again. Yeah, that's great for physics, but it will not actually work in the sort of real world that we actually psychologically occupy. So it's good for that, but not so much for that. And this world is safe in the sense that I've seen it. I know what it'll do. When I come into this room, yes, there will be 3 lizards that I have to kill that will explode afterwards. But that's okay. I know where they'll be. And because I know that, I also know that if I mess up and I need them for some reason, I can go out and come back. In my case, I didn't remember that I was going to get the bomb bag in this dungeon. Mm-hmm. And there was a door. I mentioned those lizards specifically because there was a door that you can bomb. And you have to do it using the lizards if you don't have the bomb bag.
Yeah, right. Mm-hmm. The little baby Dodongos. Yeah.
Yep. Yes, exactly. The baby Dodongos. So I messed up. I didn't know it was there. And they teach you, like, you turn around and go back the other way, and there it is. And I went, I guess I could bomb that open with the baby Dodongus. So I'll just go out and come back in. And I just love that. Even though it means even though it means you repeat some challenges, such as those laser eyes. If you blow those things up with bomb plants or whatever, which you can do to get by them, you'll have to do it again. But that's fine. You know how to do that, right? So it's not like there's no angst about the world itself. It just makes sense to you in a very sort of simplistic world model. So I really like that.
Well, yeah. And on the flip side of the resetting of rooms that are necessary, the opposite is true when you hit a milestone, like when you figure a puzzle out or open a major door or something like that. If you die and come back, even though you do have to retrace your steps to some degree, the puzzles or the dungeons are designed in such a way to where you're generally not too far from getting back to where you were because they're usually cyclical or you've gotten a shortcut, or something like that.
Yeah.
A lot of shortcut use related to opening doors. And so that is also a sense of safety because once you figure a puzzle out and open it, the next time you come back, it'll already be open. And so that's also a nice psychological safety. So you don't feel like, other than it's a bummer to start at the beginning of the dungeon, some of that might have just been the era and kind of being on a card or what have you. Even though they technically have save anywhere, it doesn't put you, in the exact spot. But at least that you're always making progress moving forward, and you don't have to worry about saving the game. There's not this, you don't have to save all the time because you did something. You can just play, and
you just play. And if you die, which I did at one point, those lizards, I forgot you could block them with the shield. We'll talk about the shield in a little while. But I had trouble staying locked onto them and like turning around, which is part of the point. And because I think it's supposed to teach you that you can do that. And I didn't pick it up right away, and I went in there and then I fell into the lava or something like that. It just was series of mechanical errors. It just, it happened. Tricky. But I was also like, and it's like, do you want to continue? I'm like, yes. Oh, good. Yeah, here I am. And look, I can get here really quick because I know exactly where I'm going now. And later, in a second session or third session or whatever, however many it took me this time, I also saved right in the middle of the dungeon, right after I had enabled the elevator, which is the shortcut to take you up to the top.
Yeah.
Before I had opened the mouth of the, I don't know, the ancient Dodongo or whatever you would call that, but that head against the wall, which also the first time I saw back in my Mr. Rhythm days was one of the most mind-blowing things ever. It was like, whoa.
And then the eye puzzle too with that thing, right?
The
concept that you blow the eyes and stuff, and you can even jump onto the head if you want to.
Yep. Yeah, I had done that in the past. I didn't do that this time. I just walked and dropped them from above. But yeah, it's so perfect. I was actually thinking we're talking about shortcuts and like it all being very mechanical in the sense of repeatable. And it makes me think that that's a lot of the Dark Souls magic as well.
Yeah, I was going to mention Dark Souls earlier. Yeah.
Yep, because it's very much the same. There are shortcuts everywhere. They take you a while to find. And the combat, I mean, even though it can be very punishing, it is very repeatable. Like it's all readable, and it's sort of an oddly comforting, difficult game. And I think that's part of that game's magic. And I think it ties into to this one. And it feels sort of similar in the way you're exploring and, enlarging the world, and the way the world does the same thing there. It resets. You come back, you die, you come back, everything's back, they're all in the same places. They're all going to act the same way, etc. So, more of a Legend of Zelda for the hardcore, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. This it's, I think the other thing about this dungeon that I wanted to bring up to shift topics a tiny bit was just the bomb progression itself as introducing a tool. We talked about this in pre-show too, and just you brought the point that first you're introduced to the bomb plants. You can't pick them up yet because they're too heavy, or you're too weak as a child. So the first, you get the...
I prefer to think they are too heavy, not that I am too weak.
All right. Yeah, fair enough. There you go. Glass is half full. But, you eventually do get the bracelet so you can pick them up, but they're obviously associated with specific locations. And so you can't have bombs where the level designers don't want you to have bombs in that case. And then the progression, as Brett mentioned, earlier, the next progression of getting the bomb bag, which means you then have an inventory anytime you can have the bomb, which we all know there's going to be a bomb in this game anyway, because it's a Zelda game. And then the bomb itself becomes the boss key for getting into the boss fight itself, and to actually progress forward to get to that point by blowing up the eyes to open up the big skeleton. And so it's just like taking one concept of the bomb and layering it very methodically through the level design, but also step by step, right? Where you're gaining more verbs to use, more power, and more accessibility to the bombs. And they're doling it out to you. So you didn't get the bomb bag right away, where you're like, right. Oh my God, I have a bomb bag. I can use bombs anywhere. Oh boy. Okay. I need to think about all the places I can use bombs. No, they only let you use the plants, and the plants can only be carried so far, so they're really just like beautifully easing you into this concept. And then when you get the bomb bag, you're like, I can have bombs anywhere.
Yep.
It's like,
it's amazing.
It's just like the perfect progression of one concept, one tool. And then you use it to get into the boss, and then you use it on the boss.
Yeah.
It's just like blowing my mind.
You can even have seen it before you've gotten to the Goron city. You can see bombs in the shop in Hyrule City. So you can even like be teased to their existence. Like, of course, it's a Zelda game, and if you've played one before, you'll know about them. But you get in there, but you can't buy them because you don't have a bomb bag. Yeah. So like you can actually, there are, in a lot of these cases, same thing with the Deku seeds. They're sort of giving you the long view of, hey, this is very enticing, isn't it? Oh, sorry. You haven't done it yet, but you're going to be able to, you can have the confidence, right, that you'll be able to do this. You'll be able to come here and buy bombs if you need it. Right. And if you're a Zelda fan and you see the bombs in the shop, you're like, oh, the bombs in 3D, what's that going to mean?
There's also maybe you didn't open the door, but there's also a shop in the Goron town that has bombs right there.
Yes.
Yeah, so it's like you see that guy too, and and by the way, there's that one guy, that's that one big guy who's working on something that says
he's like, it won't be done in a few years.
Yeah, so you're like, oh,
there's
wow.
it's everywhere. It's and again, that ties into that concept of time. There's always this sense of time and growing up, and and all of that, and because it ties all that stuff together, it sort of ties in, for the sort of generally intended audience, right? I mean, I don't want to lose sight that Nintendo does make games for children, right? I mean, that is very much part of their DNA. But they're also saying that growing up is an adventure, right? I mean, that just the mere act of growing up is sort of an adventure. And I don't know, I find that really lovely. It's another reason why these games always appeal to me.
Yeah. I forgot to mention, I think I mentioned this to go back a little bit, or a lot of it. We talked about it in pre-show, but I don't think I mentioned it. When we were talking about the audio direction puzzle for Saria, finding Saria with her music on the stereo, did I mention the Breath of the Wild?
I don't think you mentioned it specifically. No, I think you said in other games or something like that. Yeah, so you should, right? Go ahead.
Well, I think I mentioned a little bit. I talked a little bit more about it in pre-show with Brett, but I wanted to point out that sort of directionality of the music being a cornerstone of the game, and that being one of the early puzzles, finding her by listening to the music, which direction it was coming from, is a great early example of stuff that they still do today. And ironically, in the equivalent of the Lost Woods in Breath of the Wild, they have another fundamentally systemic aspect of the game that is something that you use, and is I don't want to be vague for Brett or others who will eventually play it, but that you use constantly, and is integrated into every aspect of the game. And just like this music thing in this game, ends up being the key to finding your way through the Lost Woods in that case. And so, I kind of would like to think that the designer in the Lost Woods of Breath of the Wild was a kid when they played Ocarina of Time. You know what I mean?
Wouldn't surprise me. Yeah.
And so you see this generation of, and there's still these sort of like, these traditions, the tradition of level design in a Zelda game is still being carried forward in very clever ways, because I didn't use a walkthrough or any cheats on Breath of the Wild myself. And so when I discovered the solution to that on my own, then that revelation, because it's like the music thing, or it's like any physics oriented solution. It's really like right there in front of you. It's there. It's just, you have to like put, two and two together to have the revelation, and to see them, to see the music thing happen here. It's like, it kind of dawns on you that they've always been doing it. I'd have to think about like, what was the SNES one? I'm just blanking on it. I just said it earlier, the SNES.
Link to the Past?
Link to the Past. I would have to think about an equivalent to Link to the Past, because I guess they maybe were a little bit more limited on their rule set. But anyway, that tradition is alive and well in Breath of the Wild, so it's kind of neat to see.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's one of the things that, it's one of the things that I think they get a hard time about at times, where they're too hidebound or whatever. You hear that all the time, like they don't modernize their design or whatever. I've seen those complaints in the critical sphere over the years, and I don't care. But B, it's funny when they do try to break out of it with, I think Skyward Sword, and then I think Link Between Worlds does this a little bit too. But Skyward Sword, I remember really getting kind of a raw deal critically, because you can buy things and do things out of order.
Yeah.
You remember that sort of conversation around the game?
Vaguely,
guys,
yeah.
You people, what do you people want?
Right.
Let's just make our games.
Well, I have a counter argument to that with A Link Between Worlds specifically, because I think I might have said this when we play that as a bonus episode, right, as well? But
no, you talked about it because I didn't have access to it.
Oh, that's right. Well, anyway, I feel like Link or maybe I was talking to a friend at work about this at one point, because he and I were kind of obsessively deconstructing Zelda, Breath of the Wild. But Link Between Worlds is like I describe it as a shipped prototype for Breath of the Wild in certain ways.
Mm-hmm.
And so the concept of renting the items, which is what they do in Link Between Worlds, is a sort of early precursor to some of the stuff that they allow you to do. Because obviously Breath of the Wild is open world, so you can get, items. The basic items you get fairly early, and then you just have to use them wherever you want to. But they're testing out some of those concepts. And I would say actually my point about the Lost Woods solution in Breath of the Wild compared to this one, it is a tradition, but I actually think it is the modern representation of that same tradition. Like it is because it's a physics and not materiality. I don't know if that's a word, but it's the elemental. It's a physics and elemental solution to a similar thing, and it's something that you could only do today. So I would warrant that the critics of that. I think before Breath of the Wild, I think the criticisms might have been founded, but I think Breath of the Wild, at least they have started to find the modern versions of their traditional designs.
Yeah,
if that makes sense.
And I think probably it has something to do with the young designers. I know that was a real thing talked about with that game, is that it was partially being led by a new generation of designers. I mean, that's one of the things people talk about with Nintendo is like, what's going to happen when Shigeru Miyamoto's not around anymore?
Yeah.
And it's one thing that they're consciously trying to address in the last few years, 5 years. So there's a few things I want to touch on. There are a couple of mini mechanics that we wanted to touch on. I want to just mention, you mentioned King Dodongo earlier. So far, it might be my favorite moment. Maybe the Ganondorf look. I really like that too. But the King Dodongo reveal where
the point of
Link
view
falls down into the location where he's going to fight. He comes all the way down and lands on the ground in his 3-point hero pose or whatever. And then you get this changed point of view where you are looking through, in theory, I guess, the monster's eyes, and it's like even tilting a little bit as it moves. And you're coming around and you're seeing Link see the size of the monster and react with what little facial animation he has is so good because he looks so small. And I'm sure the camera is actually higher than it needs to be and stuff like that to really accentuate it, because then it cuts to the shot of him, where you're controlling him again or about to control him again, so you're at his eye level, and it really accentuates the scariness of this moment and how big this thing is, which I just love. It's just a perfect moment, in presenting an enemy. It's a great non-reveal reveal, because you haven't seen it yet, and you're getting a sense of just how immense it is, which I just love. I mean, I just love that. That's something they do really well as well. So I think there'll be a lot of that, but I wanted to call that one out because I just loved it so much.
Yeah, it was great. I mean, I think we've already seen the camera work in this game so far in those sorts of moments. Those cinematic moments are just quite good compared to anything else. And I mean, again, Metal Gear Solid would have been the closest thing to actually utilizing real-time 3D cameras in a real-time 3D world in really interesting ways. And that was a perfect example because it's breaking the mold a little bit by having it be in the point of view of the it's like, I think the obvious thing in that moment would be to be from the point of view of Link, first person, where you see this big thing and you're looking up at it, but they decided to flip it so it makes Link look even smaller. When you inhabit Link, finally you feel psychologically even smaller. So, and I mean, and I think of a nice clear boss fight. Clear, pretty straightforward. Again, we mentioned the bomb interaction, also the rolling that he does. You've potentially met in a pretty safe manner in the Goron town, which I didn't actually, now that I come to think of it, I didn't actually resolve that. I stopped him once, but I don't think I did it in the right place.
I think you might have to stop them with the bomb bag, and not with the bomb.
Oh, okay. Yeah, maybe so. Yeah.
I think that's a
Or
comeback.
maybe you need to,
Goron City.
right. You would need to, yeah, right. Bring the bombs to some place you couldn't have brought a plant because it's too far away or something. Because he goes like,
I don't specifically remember, but yeah, it is a weird thing. It also might be just because everybody's hungry. Like the state of that place hasn't changed. Like you want to go back there anyway because because you've done something for them, so there'll be interesting things. And of course, you're going to have to go back there as an adult. We're going to have the opportunity to go back there as an adult. Have
you in any of your what's that?
Go ahead.
In any of your playthroughs, have you gotten all the golden?
I think I did last time I played. 5 or 6 years ago or whatever it was.
What does it do for you?
I have no idea. I can't remember. I think you get something every 10 or something as well. Like every certain number.
Okay.
And I think for a while it's like here's a 10 rupee whatever or 50 rupee whatever, etc. I can't especially remember. Yeah. It might even be the case that you don't want to bring them too many. That's a good thing for a walkthrough. That's a sort of detail I never remember well. So
yeah, I feel like I probably won't. I don't know if I'll ever come back to this game. So I'm of a mind right now of trying to get it all, do 100% it, but I don't know. Those things are probably pretty. Some of them are probably pretty tricky. There's a couple that were in special rooms in this dungeon that obviously you'd have to come back to the dungeon to go get them if you missed them. So. And I'm sure I missed some even.
I got two in this dungeon, I believe.
I got 3.
Oh, okay. Well, I missed one.
Yeah. So, but I don't even know if that's all of them. There could have been. I feel like I heard one.
You have to look at a walkthrough for stuff like that. It's just, it's not. And at our age and with our time, it's not possible.
Well, at the very least, at least they have an audio cue, right? So you do often know, and Navi will sometimes point them out too. So I figure I'll get more of the tools, later on, and then kind of maybe do a scour, see how close I can get. But I still have a silly dream to someday get all of the seeds in I don't know, Deku seeds? No, the Korok seeds. Yeah, the Korok seeds in Breath of the Wild. Because I have the mask, so technically I could do it, but
it's like 1,000 of them, dude.
It's not 1,000, but it is like 600 and something or 800 or something. Yeah. And what you get at the end, right?
No.
It's you get literally an item. I don't think that it does anything. That is a golden piece of poo. It's just I think a bronzed pile of looks like dog poop or something.
Nice. Congratulations. Here's your golden poo.
I think that's what you get. Yeah. Which I think that's not now we're totally off topic, but I think that's great commentary to the player, right? On because you get other things from the seeds, right? Because you can use the seeds to acquire stuff. But there's a point when you don't need to get any more. So it's it's a great commentary from the designer saying wow, you really devoted yourself to this. So I brought it up because I was kind of worried that that's what the golden, what are they called?
Skulltulas.
Skulltulas.
Yeah. I mean, you restore all the kids as well, right? I mean, so, come on. You should want to do it just for that.
Oh, yeah. The intrinsic reward.
That's right. Aren't you a moral actor in the universe?
Yeah.
Link?
No, you've convinced me. I am. That's why I should do it now. I actually didn't know that was what it was happening with those things.
Yeah, you brought up Metal Gear Solid, and so I wanted to mention at least Metal Link Solid. There was a little bit of stealth mechanic you mentioned at pre-show. I wanted to just lightly touch on. There's a couple light touches that we're gonna. Yeah,
I only brought it up because I was surprised. I forgot about it, but it would have been in our last session. But when you get into when you're going past the guards and stuff to get into the castle, it felt cool because you're stealthing. But then once you get inside the walls of the castle, there's literally the camera shifts and they're on patrol paths and you're kind of sneaking around. And so we know that Metal Gear came out the same year, but it felt like a funny And Brett, and we talked about it in pre-show, and you didn't think there were any other sections in the game that
Not
kind of
that I
heavily
can
linked.
remember. I feel like there's one. I feel like there's one section where there's a larger enemy that you can avoid. Like that, there's some of them. I forget what they're called. They're like but you also can fight them if you just want to fight them. In this case, you can. If you get caught, you get sent out, and it's a little bit of frustration. But I think
well, that's a good point though, because in the tomb, the crypt, there's those zombies that scream at you and freeze you.
Right.
And so you need to stay behind them, or maybe you can fight them. I didn't fight them, but I guess it could be an introduction of that concept for other purposes later. Not explicitly a stealth section, but it's like the concept that being behind something,
right? The things have viewpoints that you can't see.
I mean, I think we're probably giving him too much credit there, but I just thought that sequence kind of stood out to me. And
yes and no. I mean, it's probably implemented in one way, and it's just used in multiple places. So, I mean, the
teaching it part, you know what I mean? As far as like, let's put in this whole section of stealth. I'm sure they just wanted it to feel like you're infiltrating the castle, so they made it. Yeah. So, but it's just it's not a stealth game, so obviously it's not fully supported in the way that you would want it. I would want it, but anyway, I wanted to mention that from last session. I forgot. But then I'm sure you want to talk about the shield too. Right?
That was the other one. Yes, is the other little mechanical thing that we wanted to talk about was, and we may comment on it again when we're Adult Link, but there are two shields that you can get at this point in the game. One is the metal shield, which protects you from flame, from heat, specifically the bats, but also when you use it to defend yourself, Link is small, and so he holds it over his head, and so you can use it to defend against the lizards that jump around, that are the most difficult, other than the boss, the most difficult creature you've fought, in this section, I would say, because they jump around so much. They're the most twitchy. They have a certain kind of difficulty, I guess I would say. Other ones are more timing and whatever. And then the wood shield is the one that you use to deflect back against, I don't know what they are, but the little blobby things that jump.
I always forget the names. Yeah.
Are they Dekus? Maybe they're Dekus.
No, I don't think so. They might be. Or some derivative. I mean, as a Zelda fan, you'd think I'd remember the names better, but I don't know. For some reason, the names of things in Zelda are always a little bit too nonsensical for me, and so I never remember them. But not like D&D where everything makes complete sense.
And yet it's revolver something.
Yeah. Okay. Fair point. Revolver Ocelot.
Little Gear Rex.
That makes complete Revolver Ocelot. I mean, come on.
Obviously.
He's one of the best. Well, what's more though is that the Deku Shield does not outlive its purpose once you get it. It's not a linear progression of like just get the better shield. It's like no, you actually have to swap back to the Deku Shield in certain times.
Get it burned up because you forgot to switch it when you dealt with the bats or something like that too. Right. So it's because it can burn up because it's made out of wood, which I also really like. Is just the whoops. Though I think. One of the other sort of safety things is that if you need it in the dungeon, I'm not sure you do, but I feel like you can buy one again from one of those dudes.
There is one. Yep. Right in the main big room, actually. You can go get, he's to the left in the main big room.
Okay.
I think he might be behind one of the walls, but you can,
That's what it is. Yes, he's behind one of the walls. That's right. Yes. Yeah. So you can buy another one. Yeah.
If you lose it,
Yeah, I love that. I mean, it's like even the shield, is going to be available to you. That's just all of that is so good. It's very good. I mean, the metal shield is fun, and you'll never lose that, I guess. But it is really neat that it's multi-purpose. Like each one has its use, and it's not just a thing that's just getting better. It's like no, it's getting different. It's not
right.
It's
right.
It's different.
It's I don't know. It's like I guess it's sort of Venn diagram design or something, right? Where it's like they cross over because they both are shields and you can use them for certain things, but then there's some portion of each of them that are only used in one context, so it's like, and I think you get a third shield in this game, so maybe that there's another crossover there, but it's just kind of dawning on me that if you think back, like the fire in general and the concept of, like you mentioned, that the shield catches on fire, and of course we know from Breath of the Wild that elemental sort of system is sort of critical to that game's, the way it works, and I think its success. Fire, lighting things on fire has been there from the beginning. Like it's just, they've just kept evolving it into more and more interesting ways. Like you were lighting sconces in the first one, I think, and you're definitely in Link to the Past, and to open doors and stuff. You do it in here, especially in this dungeon. Yep. And then fire in Breath of the Wild is like, it's a whole thing. So I don't know.
Yeah. In fact, I think that's what I got to, was the fiery mountain area.
Yeah. Well, just, the concept of having a torch and carrying fire to a place, is they just keep leaning into it, and I don't know.
That's such an adventure thing, right?
I guess so. Yeah.
It's part of it's like it could be the cover art for any D&D, edition as well, right? It's
the torch,
the torch leaning in, walking into the darkness, and it's it's very much a staple for adventure. So
it's the opening of the dungeon run.
In fact, it is. It's very true. Oh my goodness, you were showing our geek.
Yeah, sorry, we're far afield now, but. Yep, it's a good section. That's a really good dungeon, and it was a fun way to end, to get so I'm thankful for our pace so far. Oh, and when the Goron King dances, I forgot to mention this. When he dances, once you play the song, it's just like the most amazing, like non-mocapped, keyframe animation of a thing I've ever seen.
It's so good. Oh, it's so funny. And they lean into it with the camera and everything. Oh my god.
Yeah.
Oh, it's so good. It makes me just joyful. Well, since you mentioned our pacing, I'm going to mention our pacing for next time now, and then we'll go into feedback. For next time, we're going to play until you can become the hero of time. So that will be or it'll be one more stone and going to the temple.
Okay. That sounds exciting.
I'm the hero of time.
I might play Majora's Mask after this.
I am so every time, because it's on the same disc for me, and every time I'm like flipping through to which game, I always flip past Ocarina and go whoops, and then I go, ooh, maybe when I'm done this session today.
That's one of the few I haven't played. There's more than a few, but that's one of them I haven't played. I don't know why. It was just always kind of pushed me off, but maybe now is the time.
It's really interesting, and I did start to play it right after I finished Ocarina last time I played Ocarina, and it was too much. It was too much Zelda all at once, and I remember there was a dungeon in it that had a very like memorization based, like it was a race or something. Yeah. And I really didn't like it, and I beat that. And after I beat that, I was like, you know what? I don't know if I want to play more right now, because I don't like that as a mechanic. And I was like, if there's going to be more of this in this game, and there might not be. Like, I don't know. I didn't go and read a walkthrough or anything like that. But I think I did actually watch a video while I was doing it, so that I would not make the wrong. Because there's one where you had to make turns as well, and if you made the wrong turn, you lost time. And I was like, are you kidding me? Like. What? Yeah, I did not like it. Okay. Anyway, enough of that. Next time, become the hero of time, and we'll see if we do any other side stuff. I will probably do some more side stuff. I will try to go to the graveyard and things like that. So I look forward to that. Let us turn now to email. We didn't have any new reviews this time. I just want to, as I always do, mention that we love each and every review we get. We like to read them on the air. We love to. We don't do any advertising for the show or anything like this. This This is us talking every week and you getting a chance to listen. So if you could send in a review if you never have, or, if you have, we thank you, and, just keep telling your friends. So, because why not? I mean, everybody should be blessed with our voices in their ears.
Oh boy.
Let's move on to email. You, sir, have the first one as is customary, and I don't even remember. I don't have it in front of me. Oh, from Zimmy, I think.
Yeah, it's from Zimmy. Yep.
These are, of course, gameclub@gmail.com is what I meant to say. Go ahead.
So, Legend of Zelda is the subject from Zimmy Finger. Hey, Tim and Mr. Rhythm. I still can't believe how that came up. That I didn't even remember.
This is why the thing in your views, it's all come full circle.
Yeah, exactly. Oh man, this is our last series, folks. We're done after this. We've come full circle and we've achieved some sort of Anyway, just wanted to thank you for the episodes and interviews. I got the Fire Crystal first time playing. I love how even without a dedicated jump button, they still take advantage of verticality, like dropping bombs from above into Dodongo's eyes, to triggering the first boss by looking up. It's very cool to see all of the tiny hints, as I know players notoriously never look up, at least according to Valve's dev notes. One thing I was shocked by was the targeting system. I found out it came from watching a samurai show. One of the main problems they wanted to solve was attacking multiple enemies at once. Do you think they were successful? Lastly, kind of curious how you guys walk around. Is it by holding up, or are you like me and holding down the Z button and madly sidestepping while hitting walls and falling into pits? P.S. Brett just finished Discworld Equal Rights. Quite good. Excited to explore the series during the long winter.
Yes. A former book recommendation was basically any of the Discworld novels. So I'm glad you enjoyed it. I'm about to, I think, I've got a couple more to finish this week before I'll get to it. But then I have The Fifth Elephant. Not The Fifth Element, The Fifth Elephant.
Oh, that's really good.
The world is on top of a turtle, but also on the backs of 4 great elephants that are riding that turtle. And this is the fifth elephant, which is just an indication of why I love these books so much, because they're dreadfully funny and sometimes wry, but sometimes just fun. Anyway. So yes, I'm glad you like that. I think I read Equal Rights, which is spelled, by the way, Rites, but is about the witches and women in society in Discworld, as I recall. So good stuff. So hence the rights play there. Mm-hmm. So the question was how we move around. I move around. And there was a question about being successful. No, I just use the stick. I don't hold down the L or Z or whatever and bump into walls and things.
Well, what I end up doing is actually maybe a hybrid. I obviously the camera often will write itself in most cases fine. It's not perfect for sure. They're still getting the kinks out, and we don't have a second stick, which today would be the solution. But what I do, similar to what I think what he's talking about, is as I walk around, I just tap the Z button a fair amount, which will write itself behind you. You know what I mean? At least in my case. And so
I do that. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's kind of like, especially in some of the like the tighter corridors where there's a lot of right angles, 90-degree turns. So I'll kind of, that's, and I feel like they even kind of teach you that. They Navi hinted at it to remind you to do that often. So it's a little bit of a Band-Aid.
Even a walkway in the Kokiri forest where Kokiri forest? Well, anyway, where you to get to a person who has Koriko, okay, that has a gem up top that she's on a like tall platform. You have to go on bridges and you have to make right turns, and like if you don't center it around you, it's a pain to do. I think that all of the villages, all of the forest area really is to teach you all of these mechanics of how to move, how to use the sword, how to pick up, and how to climb. I mean, it's just everything is in there, which is another reason why it's a really good tutorial area. In addition to the Deku Tree, as far as fighting multiple enemies, I haven't done enough of that really to say whether it's successful at that. So it might be that question we might have to put off, but I don't know.
I think we'll need to, we'll definitely come back to it, because I think we're going to need a whole sequence of chatting about the Z targeting in general. It'll be interesting because we're playing with different controllers, so it'll be interesting to see how we both feel about that. I think I think I already know my answer to his question now, but I think we should come back to it. I think this is one of the, if not the most important lock-on targeting system of a third-person action adventure game maybe ever, because I think they definitely trailblazed, and they kind of they attempted at, they were very close to cracking a nut that had obviously we didn't know needed to be cracked because it was just beginning, right? But I think people have copied ever since. I think I think
Batman Arkham game I played in the last year, the most recent one, I forget what it's called, but Arkham Knight. Yeah. I played that, and it's all over that, right?
Yeah,
it's hand-to-hand combat. It's much glitzier, obviously, but it's the same thing.
Yeah, no, totally. Yeah, I mean, it's everything owes. I mean, whether they were exactly the first or not, everything they were the ones that are heralded as the first, and so I think that it's significant in that part. I think the locking on part of it. The only thing that I think they weren't quite, that I know we'll come back to when we talk about it. The only thing I think they weren't quite there on is the target switching part of it. I think today there's more automated and elegant ways to target switch, and I think what Batman did to innovate there is they made the essentially the target switch and your next strike the same thing. So you just press the button,
which goes back to Mark of Kree, right? I mean, that's
Mark of Kree was definitely the innovator there. Yeah, that a lot of people don't know, but Mark of Kree was the beginning of that sort of telegraphing.
Yes, sir, man.
Yeah, it's a good game. Yeah. I don't know if I finished that actually, but yeah, anyway, I think they got 95% there or 80% there or something, but we'll come back to it. I think it's not perfect, but and sometimes that's in the encounter design and the enemy design too. But I know it's crazy for me to criticize such a fundamental thing, because at the end of the day, it's okay that they didn't get it. No one's going to get 100%, but they got to 90%, and that's a feat. At this time, beyond anyone else. No one else could have done it, I don't think. So, but anyway, yeah, good questions though.
Yep, for sure. Thanks a lot, Zimmy, if that is your real name. We have here, this is a long one, so strap in, from Drew. It's a comment. I'm reading it as a public service. He had meant it mostly for Tim. The subject is N64 controller. As I said, it's from Drew. Dear Brett and Tim, and in fact, I think in a PS he says, "Hey, this turned out long. Don't worry about reading this on the cast." But I'm going to, because others who have Nintendo 64 controllers may benefit. First off, thanks for making such a great podcast. I've listened to so many of these episodes and look forward to each one. I especially enjoy the LucasArts anecdotes, since as a child, those games seem to originate from a magical void. That void lives inside Tim's head. Now, those anecdotes help reinforce what I've learned as a software developer. That, quote, magic void is really just dedication to craft and design with good people, and then in parentheses, and marketing and release timing and user research and accessibility and product market fit and dot. In the Ocarina of Time episode, I heard Tim mention his N64 joystick isn't in the best shape. Over the summer, I bought an N64 off eBay as a birthday treat, and as a result, had to deal with old controllers too. Perhaps the knowledge I gained during my fall down a rabbit hole can help. And forgive me if you know all this already. Narrator, he didn't. You can clean the analog stick. I opened the OG controllers my unit came with, then the actual stick unit itself. It's completely self-contained and can be replaced. I cleaned out all the quote-unquote dust and then lubricated all the parts with something I found online called, quote, joystick butter.
Awesome.
fact, yeah, it's a pretty good one. Fun fact, the dust is actually the plastic N64 stick slowly carving into its plastic quote-unquote bowl. These tridents, though iconic, were too advanced for their time. Or Nintendo was making a cost decision and used incompatible plastics. Who knows? But apparently lubricating them properly can extend their life. After putting the stick and controller back together, it was much smoother and felt almost like new. I was lucky these sticks hadn't been used enough to make them immensely wobbly, as that cannot be fixed with cleaning and lubrication alone. I've tried generic aftermarket N64 controllers in the past. The ones that look exactly like the official controller but are quote-unquote new, don't bother. The sticks are horribly tight, will harm your hands, and often have drastically different analog response curves. This time, I had great success with a recently released 2019 30-party controller called the Tribute 64. It has only 2 prongs and a slightly larger analog range than the official controller. For example, in Rogue Squadron, you can turn your ship a little faster than normal, but those are more than offset by having a working, sensitive stick and knowing you're not slowly destroying a thing you love each time you pick it up. It shifts fast, works well, and is affordable. If either of you try, I'd love to hear your thoughts. And finally, if you're more of a DIY fan, then you have 2 alternate options. One is that the piece that wears out, the bowl of the stick, has been reverse engineered and reproductions can be purchased online. I haven't needed to try this yet, but heard that they're a little scratchy. The other option is quite costly, yet amazingly extreme. Steel sticks. This is a drop-in complete reverse engineering of the entire joystick assembly using much higher quality and more durable materials than the original. Unfortunately, they are as expensive as the entire retail controller, and they are only made in batches. They're targeted at the speedrunning community. Hopefully this info helps you play this game with an original or as close to original experience as possible. He has some links. I will send those along in the show notes. Thanks again for sharing your expertise and experience on a great podcast, Drew. And also thank you, Drew, for sharing your controller expertise and experience, because there is no way I would have been able to come up with any of that.
Thank you.
I do have a PPS as well. So last thing, if you're experiencing any input lag or artifacts on your modern LED, plasma, OLED TV, or are you playing on CRT, I found the RetroTink 2X Pro to work really well. And there's another link for that. I'll put that in the show notes as well. I'm playing on my Wii with a HDMI output that I found, which works fine, and apparently has no lag because it's into the HDMI. So it seems to work for me. I'm not super sensitive to those things, so I might not even notice, but yeah, I will put that in the show notes as well. So you were going to say, sir?
Oh no, I was just going to say thank you so much. I mean, I definitely will open the controller up now and at least clean it. Maybe look for the joystick butter. There's probably some equivalent. What's that?
I said I can't believe it's not joystick butter.
Oh boy, really? Yep. Dad joke. And yeah, so I am not surprised. I am not to like throw shade at Nintendo on yet another controller thing, but I've heard that the Joy-Con drift issue that they're being sued for multiple times is also grime in there. Like I think it's possible. I've heard it's possible to, don't quote me on this, do your research, but I've heard it's possible to actually clean those as well to improve the drift problem. Because I literally have both my sets of Joy-Cons are drifting. I bought a second set to fix my first one.
Repair them.
What's
but
that?
now, well, they were repairing them for free.
They were, and I need to actually do the due diligence on seeing if I can get them to actually fix them. But it's a bit of a, it's not the smoothest process to get that done. So I got stalled out, which not surprising, but
it's ended because of COVID.
Yeah, they slowed down even more for COVID. Yeah, supposedly they were still doing some, but anyway, yeah, they don't have workers, and yeah. So, but anyway, yeah, thank you for that. It's every time I touch that stick on this controller, I'm scared because it feels like it's. So I can't believe there's a metal one too, which does make sense for the obsessiveness of games, but yeah. It's such a weird controller. I mean, it's just so funny to me. There's a whole half of the controller that I'm not using, and there's no purpose for it, when I'm playing like one of their signature games.
Yep.
So funny.
Yep, it's super weird. Well, I guess that's about it. Thanks again to those emails, for those emails rather, at devgameclub at gmail.com. It is here in the States, the day after you're hearing this, it is Thanksgiving. I will say, as I think I've said in the past, one of the things I'm thankful every year is that I get to continue doing this podcast. I mean, I'd be happy to just talk with Tim about games every week, but it's nice to hear from our community, and to be doing this for you. And I really do appreciate it. It's, yeah, I mean, I don't think that we would do this with this kind of regularity if not. So,
yeah,
it's been great from so many perspectives, but I do really appreciate it. I love interacting with you via Twitter. Maybe someday I'll be able to go back to Twitch, and because I enjoyed that as well. And I thank those folks too for showing up as regularly as they did. You all know who you are, even you, Brian. I know Brian doesn't listen to the feedback; he just skips ahead. But if you are, just one time, Brian, I'm watching you. Anyway, that's I did want to say, at least, thank you for listening these years. Almost, is it really 6 years? It's gonna be 6 years, isn't it?
Is it 6 or 5?
Five. It's gonna be 5 years.
Five. Yeah. Whew, you just gave me a heart attack.
5 years.
I was thinking about it recently, but yeah, 5. But still, 5 is. We got to think about something for 5 years. That's what are we gonna do? We got to something special. I had some ideas. But yeah, I agree. I mean, well said. I can't say it any better than that, but I am also thankful. And it is such a wacky thing to be doing a podcast this long. I don't know, almost weekly consistently. And yeah, and it's been fun.
It's like half a dozen or something like that we've missed. And it's just been like random act of God type stuff and stray neurons. Yeah, I mean, it's just been like, oh, you were out of power that one time, or trail one time or whatever. So it's been pretty rare. So
I have to say too, though, the funny thing about fans writing in or listeners writing in about thanking us, I also thank them, like Brett said. But the funny thing about the podcast for me, and it actually just came up playing this last session of Ocarina of Time. I'm still learning things from the podcast because we're playing the games, and I'm still actively in game development, and so I'm like playing these older games where I really should have learned these lessons a long time ago, but I'm just discovering these.
There's so many lessons, right?
Yeah, it's true. It's impossible, right? It's like it's like being a writer and having read all the books. You can't really do that, but you're trying. If anyone's going to do it,
you're making more.
But it's been very interesting to me because I'm forced through the podcast to dissect these games that I would sometimes for my job, especially if they were direct competition or applicable. But I'm learning stuff about games that I work on in Zelda game, even though I don't make Zelda games. So it's like. Yeah, I don't know. It's very interesting to go back and still be learning, and know that there's stuff that you don't know, you still don't know, So
yeah. Yep. No, it comes up between us all the time. How much this stuff is really useful to us, and our people ask me sometimes, well, how will you apply X, Y, or Z? And I'm like, I don't know, but there's a sense in which it puts me in the mental space of how to think about problems because I have years of the podcast to draw on that. I have just a large library of tools. It's like having gone to a hardware store and bought one of everything, and knowing that that's there and that I have a language for talking about it, or can even look back on it and refresh myself when I'm like, didn't we talk about this? Like what was our conclusion? And it's there for us on the shelf too. So a lot of good things about it.
Yep.
I remain thankful and humbled.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, we will see you next week when we become the hero of time. I will let me do my normal outro. I was like about ready to move right on. Let's see. I'm looking for my outro stuff. Right. Okay. So reviews, send them in. Email devgameclub@gmail.com. You can, of course, find us in the show notes at devgameclub.com, where I've also split out all the interviews and episodes and my reading lists, as we had a thank you for this time. And of course, you can find the show on Twitter at @DevGameClub. Where you can also find my co-host at
Tim Longo Jr. with a JR at the end.
Our intro and outro music, which I'm also thankful for, was written and performed by Kirk Hamilton and commissioned by friend of the cast, Aaron Evers. Have fun becoming the hero of time this week, and good night.
Good night.